Hello, welcome to e-learning, and today we are going to be looking at candlestick patterns. Let's begin with a brief summary of what you're going to learn in this video. So in this video, you're going to learn the most relevant and most frequently used pattern. We'll begin by looking at the elements of a candle pattern and how we'll use different elements to classify the various patterns in useful ways. And then we'll go ahead and look at each candle pattern individually. We look at the name and classification of each candle pattern and the logical interpretation of each pattern, which is extremely important, as a comparison in connection between different types of patterns, which is something that helps memorizing the name and the logical interpretation, as well as the advantages and disadvantages of using candlestick patterns as a trading technique, and some very important conclusions about the use of this technique in the real trading. This is considered to be basic knowledge about trading, so this entire course is free. And let's begin by talking about the basic elements of a candlestick patterns. Candlestick pattern has two elements that classify it, and it is important to understand these elements and the classifications because that will simplify things later. Let's take a look at each of these two elements individually to see what they mean. So they are complexity and type. Complexity of a candlestick pattern refers to how many candlesticks compose the pattern. There are two levels of complexity. There are simple patterns and complex patterns. Let's see what these two classifications mean. A pattern can be simple, which is when the pattern is formed by only one candlestick. In other words, the shape of only one candlestick will give a signal about what the market is going to do. A pattern can also be complex, which is when the pattern is formed by two or more candlesticks. So the combination of two or more candle shapes will form a single pattern that will signal what the market is going to do next. All candlestick patterns we are going to study in this course can be categorized into these two levels of complexity. Candlestick patterns can be simple, which is when the pattern is formed by one candlestick only, or they can be complex, which is when the pattern is formed by two or more candlesticks together. That sums up the first element of a candlestick pattern, which is its complexity. Let's now take a look at the second element, which is type. So there are three types of patterns: the reversal pattern, the continuation pattern, and the neutral pattern. Let's begin by taking an overall look at the reversal patterns. Patterns indicate that price will reverse its current direction, meaning that the price is going in one direction, and when the pattern appears, it will start going in the opposite direction immediately after. Reversal patterns can be bullish or bearish. So let's take a quick look at what that means. The term bullish and bearish are part of the market to indicate if something is going up or down, as they curiously. When traders say bullish, they want to indicate upside because bulls throw their prey up, and when they attack and traders say bearish, they indicate downside because bears throw their prey down. And when they attack, let's examine the bullish reversal pattern. In a bullish reversal pattern, the price will be going down, then a specific pattern will appear to signal a reversal to the upside. In other words, the bullish reversal pattern signals that the price will go up immediately after the pattern. Conversely, in a bearish reversal pattern, it means that the price will be going up in a specific pattern, and the pattern will appear to signal a reversal to the downside. Some people get confused by this, but all you need to remember is that the term bullish or bearish indicates the direction price will go after the pattern. So a bullish reversal pattern signals that price will go up. In a bearish reversal pattern signals that a price will go down. In a nutshell, reversal patterns indicate that the price will reverse its current direction, and there can be divided into bullish and bearish reversal patterns. Next, we are going to look at a continuation pattern. Continuation patterns indicate that the prices will continue to go in its current directions, like the name suggests. Continuation pattern states that the price will continue its current trends, unlike reversal patterns which reverse. Continuation patterns can be bullish or bearish. In a bullish continuation pattern, it means that the price will be going up and then a specific pattern will appear to signal that the price will continue to go up. Instead of reversing to the downside, the term bullish indicates the direction price will go immediately after the pattern. In a bearish continuation pattern, it means that the price will be going down and then a specific pattern will appear to signal that the price will continue to go down instead of reversing to the upside. Once again, the term bearish indicates the direction price will go immediately after the pattern that covers the continuation pattern. In summary, the reversal patterns indicate price will change direction. In continuation patterns indicate that prices will not change directions. Both reversal and continuation patterns can either be bullish or bearish. The third and last type of candlestick pattern is the neutral pattern. This kind of patterns indicate a stop in price, unlike reversal and continuation types. There is no such thing as bullish or bearish neutral patterns. In a neutral pattern, price can either be going up or down, and then a specific candlestick pattern will appear to signal that the price will stop. For example, if the price was going up in a neutral pattern, it will appear and indicate that the price has stopped going up. But it doesn't necessarily mean it will continue going up or reverse to the downside. In other words, the neutral pattern doesn't indicate the direction that the price will go next. It just indicates that the price has stopped advancing its current direction. That concludes the overview of the three types of candlestick patterns. In summary, reversal patterns indicate that the price will change direction, and in continuation patterns indicate that the price will continue its current direction. Both reversal and continuation pattern can either be bullish or bearish. Neutral patterns indicate that the future direction of a price has stopped momentarily. And since neutral patterns don't indicate the future direction of the price, there is no such thing as bullish or bearish neutral patterns. That covers the two elements of a candlestick patterns. A combination of these two elements formed a classification of candlestick patterns, which is very useful to organize the many patterns you want to memorize and understand. The way we use the classification is by saying the complexity first and then the specific type to classify the pattern. For example, a simple bullish reversal pattern, just by looking at the classification, we know that the pattern is composed by only one candlestick. And then it's simple pattern, and we also know that a pattern indicates a reversal to the upside since its type is bullish. Another example can be a complex bearish continuation pattern. Again, just by looking at the classification, we know that the pattern is composed by two or more candlesticks, and that it indicates that the price will continue to go down since it's a bearish continuation. A third example could be a simple neutral pattern. In this case, we know that the pattern has only one candle, and that indicates a momentarily stop and price. The way we study various candlestick patterns is by saying their name and then saying their classification. For example, a hammer is a simple bullish reversal pattern, and in this case, the name of the pattern is hammer. And just by looking at the classification, we know that it is composed by one candlestick only, and it indicates that the price will go up immediately after the pattern appears. Another example is the doji, which is a simple neutral pattern. So the name of the pattern is doji, and by looking at its classification, we know that it's composed by one candle, and it indicates a stop in Adam in advance of the price. As I said before, this is useful to memorize and organize the patterns since there are many of them, and we understand the details of how we classify the various candle patterns. We start by studying the patterns individually to learn about their logical interpretations, which is the most important part before we move on. But there's one last thing to remember, which is the names and classifications, just to help us memorize and organize the patterns. The most important thing is to understand the logic behind each candlestick pattern, and then it will benefit you from learning all the patterns. If you don't understand why they might work in the rationale behind each one, let's begin by taking a deeper look into the neutral candlestick patterns. They are only simple neutral candlestick patterns, mini patterns formed by one candlestick alone. The neutral patterns are formed by the doji family, which is in itself formed by 5 types of doji. Main characteristics of a doji is that the opening in closing of a value of a candlestick are equal to one another. In other words, dojis have no candle body. That the key to understanding why dojis are a neutral pattern. The fact that the open and closed values are equal to one another implies that there was no clear winner in the internal battle of buyers and sellers of the candlestick during the formation of the candle. Buyers and sellers struggle to see who is going to dominate that candlestick in particular. If the candlestick closes higher than it opened, generally means what? Buyers won that battle. If the candlestick closes it's lower than it opened, generally means that the sellers won the battle. If the open and closed values are exactly the same, it means that neither of the buyers nor the sellers won, because they have similar power and they have similar power price. Hence, no specific buyers or direction. That's why a doji is mainly a neutral candlestick pattern. Even though the main characteristics of dojis is simple, there are 5 different variations of dojis. And these dojis are the doji star, the long leg doji, the gravestone doji, the butterfly doji, and 4 price doji. Even though dojis are neutral patterns, these different variations of dojis imply different things about buyers and sellers. The doji star received its name because of its shape vaguely resembles the star, which makes it easier to remember the candlestick shape. The main characteristic is that the open and closed values are equal to one another. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a doji. The other important characteristic here is there are small upper and lower tails and they have equal size. The fact that the upper and lower tail are small implies that there was a battle between buyers and sellers during their formation. Hence, this battle wasn't so violent, hence resulted in a candlestick with relatively low volatility. The fact that the upper and lower tails of the candlestick are equal to one another imply that at some point during the internal history of the candlestick, buyers, they were winning the battle, and in another point, sellers were winning the battle. Both buyers and sellers temporarily won that battle. With the same intensity, you can think of the candlestick tails as the marks of this battle. That means that the doji star is a completely neutral pattern. The long-legged doji is exactly the same as the doji star, with one exception, which is the size of the upper and lower tails. This difference in the length of the upper and lower tails implies that the battle between buyers and sellers was more heated than in a doji star. For example, even though the battle was more violent, the upper and lower tails are still equal in length. That means that buyers and sellers still have the same power. So the long leg doji is a completely neutral pattern, that only the difference is that it's more volatile pattern than the doji star, meaning that the internal battle between buyers and sellers was more heated. The gravestone doji is where things start to become a little trickier, because the upper and lower tails are asymmetrical. For instance, in the gravestone doji, the upper tail is large. In the lower tail, it's non-existent. That means that during the internal history of the candlestick, buyers were once up there in the high of the candlestick. However, in order for the candlestick to close in the same price as the open, it became a doji. Sellers had won that battle at the top of the candlestick and brought the price down. Despite the asymmetry in the candlestick tails, the pattern still implies a neutral bias because the open and closed values are equal to one another. Butterfly doji is the mirror image of the gravestone doji. We can see that at some point during the internal history of the candlestick, sellers were winning the battle near the low, but buyers had to overcome the sellers to make the candlestick close in its opening value. We also have the 4 price doji, and the name comes from the fact that all the 4 prices in the candlestick, meaning the opening, the high, the low, and the close values, are all equal to one another. Thinking in terms of the interpretation of this pattern, there is no battle between buyers and sellers, as we can infer by the absence of the upper and lower tails. Notice that there are 2 things that we pay attention to in dojis: asymmetry between upper and low tails and their size. Next, we are going to look at simple reversal patterns both bullish and bearish. The first pattern you're going to study is the hammer, which is a simple bullish reversal pattern. In other words, when the price is going down and a hammer appears, that's a signal that the price will reverse its direction to the upside. The shape of a hammer has a few characteristics that make it a bullish pattern. You'll notice that the hammer received its name because the candlestick resembles the shape of a hammer. This pattern is also composed of a small bullish candle body that lives in the upper range of the candlestick. Hammers can have a small upper tail, but one of its main characteristics is that a larger lower tail. The logic behind a hammer is quite simple. We need to roll back the internal history of the candlestick to understand what it means by a bullish reversal. You'll notice that the hammer opens on its upper range, creates a large lower tail, and then it closes on the extreme of the upper range with a small bullish body. And that basically means that the sellers had a control in the beginning of the formation of the hammer. That's why the price that's down there at some point. However, once buyers realize that the sellers are gaining control, they appear to assume control again so that they make the price close to the upper extreme of the candle range. A large lower tail signifies the fact that sellers had a control and the buyers were able to overcome what. If the buyers are able to do that, it means that there is more buying pressure than selling pressure on the candlestick. The way a hammer is generally appears in a price chart is when the price is going down, then a hammer appears, and immediately after the price begins to go up. One thing to remember here is that all hammers work. In other words, sometimes a hammer will appear in price, will continue its main direction without reversing as the pattern suggests there. Is an important lesson here that hammers, like any other candlestick patterns, are just one sign about what the market might do in the future. They are not definitive signals. Another point of confusion that is relevant not only to hammers but to all candlestick patterns is the fact that the shape of the candlestick can vary a lot and still be classified in the same way. For instance, a hammer might have a slightly larger candle body or a small upper tail and still be classified as a hammer. The point is that these candle patterns don't have a rigid shape. They have an overall shape that is malleable and it can be subjected to some changes. Next pattern we are going to see is the inverted hammer, which is a simple bullish reversal pattern. Inverted hammer is very similar to the hammer, but it has one major difference. The candle body lives in the lowered range of the candlestick. So naturally there is a large upper tail instead of a large lower tail. The inverted hammer is to a bullish reversal pattern because the candle body is bullish, but it's a weaker pattern relative to the hammer. In order to understand that, we have to go back to the internal history of the candlestick. The fact that the inverted hammer has a small bullish body in a large upper tail implies that at some point during the formation of the candlestick, buyers were really strong. However, sellers were able to overcome that and bring the closing of the candlestick to its lower range. Even though sellers prevented buyers from closing the candle on its upper range, buyers still managed to win the battle in the lower range by creating a bullish body. We can clearly see that even though buyers won the battle in the end, they are not as strong as they are in a normal hammer pattern. The way an inverted hammer appears in a price chart is when the price is going down, then an inverted hammer appears and then price will tend to go in the opposite direction. Right afterwards, the next pattern is the shooting star, which is a simple bearish reversal pattern. The shooting star has a very similar shape to the inverted hammer pattern, but there are two fundamental differences. The first is that a shooting star is a bearish reversal pattern, while the inverted hammer is a bullish reversal pattern. That means that a shooting star appears when the price is going up to signal a reversal to the downside. Second difference is that a shooting star has a bearish body while the inverted hammer has a bullish body. The shooting star pattern is formed by a candlestick with a small bearish body that sits in the lower range of the candlestick. In a long upper tail, he received its name because he resembled the silhouette of a shooting star. So that's one way of memorizing a pattern. The logic interpretation of why this is a bearish reversal pattern is that since it appears when the price is going up, the long tail implies that buyers were once dominating the candlestick. The sellers were strong enough to bring the price down and make the candlestick close with a small bearish body in the lower range of all that implies more selling pressure than buying pressure, When that happens while price is rising, we have a signal that the trend might reverse to the downside. The way a shooting star works is that price will be going up, and then after the shooting star appears, it will start to go down. Now let's remember again, this is just a signal. There's absolutely nothing to stop price from continuing to go up after shooting star pattern, just like with any other pattern. The next pattern we're going to study is the hanging man, which is a simple bearish reversal pattern. Hanging man has a very similar shape to the hammer, but the main difference is that the hanging man appears when the price is going up and has a bearish body, and the hanging man is also the shooting star pattern upside down. Just like the inverted hammer is the hammer pattern upside down, hanging man has a small bearish body that sits on the upper range of the candlestick. In a long lower tail, hanging man still implies more selling pressure because sellers are able to make the candlestick close with a small bearish body. However, notice that even though sellers win the final battle, they don't do that by a large margin, since the hanging man has a long lower tail that implies buying pressure. To the best way of looking at this is that the hanging man represents that sellers have slightly more power than buyers. Like in a shooting star, for example, where the selling pressure is much larger than the buying pressure. The way a hanging man will appear on the chart is that the price will be going up and then a hanging male will appear. It's a signal reversal to the downside. Hanging man closes the list of simple reversal patterns, but let's review a few things about how the four of them correlate with each other. There are many details that connect these four patterns in different ways. The first thing we can notice right from the start is that their shapes are very similar, with various regarding their shapes is the position of the candle body in relation to the candle range, but you consequently affect the size of the upper and lower tails. The other detail that is less self-evident is that the context in which these patterns occur dramatically change their interpretation, even though they have similar shapes. For instance, hammer is very similar to the hanging man. The only difference is that one has a bullish body and the other has a bearish body. However, the fact that the hammer appears in a down move means it will signal a possible reversal to the upside, while the hanging man appears in the upper move means a possible reversal to the downside. Notice that the quality of the candle body dramatically changes the logical interpretation of the candlestick pattern. One good way of thinking about these patterns is that the candle body tells you who won the battle, in that the candlestick and the tail tells you the places where the battle took place. Based on that, we can infer buying power or selling power. Let's move on to the complex reversal patterns, where we have two or more candlesticks forming a pattern that will indicate a reversal in the current direction of the price. We will start with where the complex pattern is said to have two candles, and then we'll move on to more complex patterns later. The first complex reversal pattern we're going to study is the bullish engulfing pattern. The bullish engulfing pattern is formed by two candles, where the first candle is a small bearish candle and the second is a medium to large bullish candle that completely engulfs the range of the first candle. The main characteristic of this pattern is the fact that the second candle completely covers or engulfs the range of the previous candle. Logical interpretations of this pattern is that buyers are powerful enough to create a candle that covers the entire range of a previous bearish candle. You'll notice that sometimes their second candle will open with a small gap down, denoting seller power, but even with the buyers, they will have enough strength to reverse that condition and create a bullish candle large enough to engulf the actions of the previous candle. That is an explicit display of buying pressure. So it's a strong indication about the force of buyers and the weakness of sellers. Bullish engulfing patterns appears when the price goes down and then a bullish candle large enough to engulf the previous bearish candle appears, therefore signaling a reversal to the upside. This pattern necessarily needs two candles because the whole pattern is based on the fact that the second candle engulfs the first one. The next complex reversal pattern is the bearish engulfing, which is precisely the opposite of bullish engulfing. Logical interpretation of the two patterns is exactly the same, but the bearish engulfing denotes a reversal to the downside. The first candle will be relatively small and bullish, and the second candle will be a medium-sized or large bearish candle to the degree that it completely engulfs the first candle. In other words, in a bearish engulfing pattern, the sellers will explicitly display dominance over buyers. The bearish engulfing pattern will appear when the price is going up, and then a large bearish candle will form completely and go for the previous small bullish candle, therefore signaling a reversal to the downside. It should be clear to you that the second candle is a very clear indication of dominance. It's useful to associate opposing patterns together in the case of the bullish engulfing and the bearish engulfing. That's not a problem because the names of the pattern clearly indicate what they mean. However, that's not always the case, as we'll see in the next two patterns. The next complex reversal pattern we are going to study is called the piercing line, which is a bullish reversal pattern formed by two candles. This is a pattern than the engulfing patterns we just studied because it involves the perception of a gap between the close of the first candle and the open of the second candle. In a piercing line, the first candle is a bearish candle, in the second candle is a bullish candle. They open with a gap down, so we have to be careful here because I gapped down the notes selling power. However, the buyer power in the second candle overcomes the selling power that creates the gap down. This is why the pattern receives its name. The second candle is able to pierce the line created by the closing of the first candle. Hence the name piercing line. This is a bullish reversal pattern because buyers are able to fill the gap between the two candles and they are capable of piercing the line created by closing the value of the first candle. The reason we care about this line created by the closing value of the first candle is because it represents the price where sellers won the battle in the first candle. So it's an important level when buyers are able to close the gap and pierce or violate that line. We have an indication that buying power is greater than selling power. The piercing line appears when the price is going down in order to signal a reversal to the upside. The next pattern is the precise opposite of the piercing line, and it's called the dark cloud. In other words, a complex bearish reversal pattern composed by the two candles. The second candle opens with a gap up, implying some buying power. The second candle closes with a significant bearish quality that not only closes the gap created by buyers but also pierces the line created by the closing value of the first candle. Even though the name dark cloud has nothing to do with the piercing line, the two patterns are mirror image of each other, and the name dark cloud comes from the analog that the second bearish candle covers the first candle. In part, just like a dark cloud sometimes covers the sun, it's an analogy that makes it easier to remember the pattern. The dark cloud will appear when the price is going up to signal a reversal to the downside. The next two complex reversal patterns you're going to study are similar to the piercing line, the dark cloud, but they are slightly weaker signals in a way. It's called bullish meeting line, which is similar to the piercing line since it's a bullish reversal pattern, but it's a weaker signal. The bullish meeting line also displays a gap between the first and second candles, but unlike the piercing line in the bullish meeting, there is no violation of the line that appears and represents the closing value of the first candle. The logical interpretation here is that buyers are strong enough to fill the gap created by sellers, but they are not strong enough to violate or pierce the closing line of the first candle. In other words, the closing line of the second candle meets the closing line of the first candle as the name of this pattern. The bullish meeting line appears when the price is going down in order to signal a reversal to the upside. We also have the bearish meaning line, which is the mirror image of the mini line. Bearish mini line is a slightly weaker version of the dark cloud because even though sellers are able to fill the gap created by buyers, they are not strong enough to pierce or violate the closing line of the first candle. Nonetheless, the bearish meaning line still represents a bearish reversal pattern. The bearish meaning line appears on prices going up in order to signal a reversal to the downside. Next, we are going to study 4 different patterns that have one thing in common, which is something called the harami position. The first pattern we are going to study is called the bullish harami. The word harami in Japanese is associated with the word pregnant, This pattern received this name because the second candle in the pattern is fully contained in the large of the first candle. This is an analogy to a baby contained inside a pregnant woman. The analogy also works in the sense that the haram means the birth of a new trend in a bullish harami. The first candle is bearish and the second candle is bullish and fully contained within the range of the first candle. In this case, the small bullish candle represents the new uptrend that is about to be born. There can be a small group up between the two candles which helps confirm this bullish signal. The logical interpretation of this pattern is that a small bullish body fully contained within a wider bearish candle means the seller stopped advancing price to the downside and a small bullish pressure begins to appear. The bullish harami appears when the price is going down in order to signal a reversal to the upside. Next, we have the bearish harami, which is a mirror image of the bullish harami. The bearish harami indicates that the buyers have stopped advancing price to the upside in the small bearish candle, fully contained within the range of the first candle. Opening with a small gap down implies the birth of a new downward trend. The bearish harami appears when the prices start going up in order to signal a reversal to the downside. Next in line of a second type of harami pattern called bullish harami cross. This is exactly like a bullish harami, but the second candle in the pattern is a doji cross. In terms of logical interpretation, the bullish harami cross is a slightly weaker signal than the bullish harami because the second candle doesn't display a bullish body. With that said, in a bullish harami cross, seller still stopped to advance price to the downside, and the doji cross opens with a small gap up to indicate bullish pressure. The bullish harami appears when the price is going down in order to signal a reversal to the upside. The next pattern is the bearish harami cross, which is the mirror image of the bullish harami cross. In the bearish harami cross, the second candle opens with a small gap down and is fully contained in the range of the previous candle, which has a bullish quality that indicates that buyers have stopped advancing price to the upside and there's a new potential downward moving being born. The bearish harami cross appears when the price is going up in order to signal a reversal to the downside. Next, you're going to study the two reversal patterns and involve prominent gaps between the first and the second candlestick. The first of these two patterns is called the bullish kicking, which is a very straightforward pattern. The bullish kicking consists of the bearish candle followed by a bullish candle. The main characteristic of this pattern is that there is a prominent gap up between the two candles. The logical interpretation here is that a large gap implies a high amount of buying pressure. The pattern receives this name because it is as if someone kicked the second candle up. And the expression bullish kicking. The bullish kicking pattern appears when price is going down in order to signal a reversal to the upside. King pattern is the bearish kicking, which is the mirror image of the bullish kicking. In a bearish version, the first candle is bullish and the second candle is bearish. The two candles are separated by a prominent gap down that implies high selling pressure. In other words, the fact that the price opened with a large gap implies that sellers have a lot more buying power than buyers. The bearish kicking pattern appears when the price is going up in order to signal a reversal to the downside. Now we'll move on to the last two complex reversal patterns that are formed by two candles. The first pattern is called the bullish to soldiers, which is a bullish reversal pattern. The main characteristic of the bullish to soldiers is that the candles are isolated by one gap but after the pattern, the two soldiers in reference to the two candles that form the pattern are two bullish candles that have a small body. The logical interpretation of this pattern is said the two isolated bullish candles imply the beginning of an upward trend. In fact, whenever you hear the word soldier in the context of a candlestick, you can associate it with a bullish quality. The bullish two soldiers appear when price is going down in order to signal a reversal to the upside. Pay attention to the fact that both candles form the pattern are isolated by one gap down before the first candle and one gap up after the second candle. The next pattern is called bearish sucrose, which is the mirror image of the bullish two soldiers. The bearish to CRO's pattern is formed by two isolated and small bearish candles. They imply the beginning of a downward movement. Given the position of being isolated by one gap before the one gap after the pattern, the bearish two crows pattern appears when the price is going up in order to signal our reversal to the downside. A close attention to the fact that there is one gap before the first candle, in one gap down after the second candle. Even though the pattern is theoretically formed by two candles, it's only with the candle after the two crows, and that we can make sure the two crows are in fact isolated by gaps on either side. Pros are usually associated with death. To the appearance of the bearish two crows represent the death of the uptrend, which implies the birth of the downtrend. Let's move on to the complex reversal patterns that are formed by three candles. The first set of complex reversal pattern is formed by three candles that we are going to study. As for patterns associated with what's called the start position, let's begin by looking at a pattern called morning star. The morning star is a bullish reversal pattern formed by three candles, where the first is a bearish candle, the second is a small bullish candle with very small or non-existent tails that opens up with a small gap down, and the third is a larger bullish candle opens up with a gap up. The start position is the position of the second candle. In other words, one small candle isolated by one gap on each side. Like other patterns, we already studied the small bullish candle isolated implies the beginning of a new trend, because even though the second candle opens up with a gap down, which implies selling pressure, the second candle is able to close with a bullish quality. The confirmation of this pattern comes in the third candle, which opens with a gap up, performs a larger bullish party. In other words, we have a double confirmation of buying pressure in the third candle. The morning star appears when the price is going down in order to signal a reversal to the upside. The expression morning star refers to a star that rises, denoting the arrival of an uptrend. After the pattern, the next pattern is called the evening star, which is the mirror image of the morning star pattern. In other words, in a bearish reversal pattern, the first candlestick is the bullish, the second candle in the pattern opens up with a gap and it forms a small bearish candle, and the third candle is a larger bearish candle that opens with a gap down. Since the second candle opens with a gap up and it ends up forming a bearish candle that implies buying pressure is losing to the selling pressure, the third candle is given a double confirmation of that by opening with a gap down and forming a bearish quality. The evening star appears when the price is going up in order to signal a reversal to the downside. Expression evening star refers to a star that falls from the sky. It's a simplistic analogy that might help memorize the shape and meaning of the pattern. The next two parts are very similar to the morning star. In the evening star, difference lies in the shape of the second candle in the pattern, meaning the candle that is in the position. The first pattern is called morning doji star. The difference between the morning star and the morning doji star is that the second candle is the doji instead of a small bullish candle. In other words, the morning doji star is slightly weaker signal in the morning star because a doji is a neutral pattern. However, the fact that the third candle is in the pattern opens with a gap up and ends up being a larger bullish candlestick makes the morning doji star a bullish reversal pattern. The morning doji star appears when the price is going down in order to signal a reversal to the upside. Once you know what a morning star pattern looks like, it becomes easy to remember what the morning doji star looks like simply by recalling the second candle in the pattern is a doji. In a star position, the next pattern is the evening doji star, which is the mirror image of the morning doji star. Once again, we can see how these patterns are related in the evening doji star. The second candle in the pattern is a doji in star position instead of a small bearish candle like in the evening star. That's the only difference. The doji candle is still associated by one gap. Since the doji is a neutral pattern, the evening doji is a slightly weaker signal than the evening star. The evening doji appears when the price is going up in order to signal a reversal to the downside. So guys, that's all for our video. Please remember to subscribe. See you in our next video.